Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for our Advancing the Solar at the Local Level workshop. To start, we are going to have an introduction from OKI's CEO, Mark Policinski. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Andy. Good morning to everyone, and welcome to the SolSmart workshop. For some reason, I can't get my video to work. Two things about that. I still understand that my remarks are heartfelt, and two, it's probably a good thing that you can't see me. Anyway, thank you so much for being with us today, and I want to begin by offering a personal welcome to our presentation partners, David Golembeski and Theresa from the Solar Foundation. And I must say, David, I love your last name.
Thank you. Yeah, nice name as well.
I also want to, of course, welcome our registrants today. Your presence demonstrates your commitment to solar energy and to harnessing its use for your communities. Solar Foundation manages SolSmart. And as you probably know, that's a national program that recognizes local governments and regional organizations for spurring solar market growth. OKI was recently awarded a Silver Designation by SolSmart. We're only one of 3 MPOs in the country to be so recognized, and the only one in Kentucky, Ohio, or Indiana. Up to this point, SolSmart has been focused, I think, primarily on certifying cities and counties, but based on OKI's solar promoting work, which we've done for several years, we were invited to be one of the first regional organizations to be so recognized, and we're proud of it. OKI provides guidance to local governments in a variety of ways. We provide best practice development for building and zoning permitting. We encourage solar-ready design. Very important work is what we've done with financial institutions and trying to get them to provide innovative funding options for solar development. And we've been working with local utilities to provide interactive solar mapping tools for property owners across the region. I do want to give a special thanks to Andy, who is one of our senior planners here at OKI, for the work he's done for a number of years on solar energy at OKI, and for his work in the SolSmart designation. And I would be greatly remiss if I did not give credit to our land use intern, Ashley Dingler-Marshall, who put together the SolSmart application, which is a thorough and daunting task in many ways, it should be, to get such an important designation. So I do thank her for her hard work this year, as well as yours. We're honored and excited to receive the SolSmart designation, but we also understand this is just the first step. We have a lot of work ahead of us. As part of the Silver designation, I think to my viewpoint, this is the biggest part of the designation, is that SolSmart will help us hold workshops like today and bring in experts like we are doing today, so they can give you their guidance right to you on how to make solar energy a bigger part of your community. In closing, a benefit of the SolSmart designation, I think, is the recognition that this region is equipped to serve the needs of its residents, its businesses, and very importantly, I think the solar industry. Solar development, whether it be at the individual household level or to larger commercial and utility scale installation, we have to remember that it brings jobs and economic activity. But in my view, it also brings a hope for the future. And that hope is that we will be able to find cleaner, more efficient ways of moving ourselves around this planet. So this designation is a signpost that we at OKI have done our work, that we've engaged in tremendous experts like you'll hear from today. But most importantly, we'll use all this to benefit you, the local communities. That really is what OKI's mission is to help the local communities. And we hope this is just another way that we do it. So I thank you for the opportunity to open up the workshop. And I certainly know that you will hear a lot of great information today. And I hope it's very enjoyable and that you can use it inside your communities. So thank you very much, and back to you, Andy.
Thank you, Mark. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Theresa Perry from the Solar Foundation, who's going to give us an overview of what's may be coming from the federal level in regards to solar with the new administration. So I will turn it over to Theresa.
Sure. Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Mark, for all your words. We are excited about our regional organizations and really see them, see you as a great way to bring in larger communities. So thank you for all the work you've done so far, and hopefully we can keep being involved in your area and keep making things happen. So I am the program director at the Solar Foundation for the Technical Assistance Program, which is part of SolSmart. Dave will go into how our program is set up, but the technical assistance side is where people can come into your community, mostly virtually right now, but come into your community and say, okay, we can help you set this up, and it is paid for by DOE. It's a federal grant, and we can get in there and help you as much as you need help to become solar ready and ready to participate in what's happening in this country. So as they said, I was asked to put together some words about what's happening in the federal arena. So just a couple quick slides. There is so much happening. I'm so excited about the way that things are going right now. There's tremendous change happening. And so as we see our current policies, these have been around forever. The investment tax credit created in 2005. And there's one for solar, there's one for wind, it's basically a tax credit that incentivizes investment in these technologies. So right now for 2021, we're at 26% can count as a tax credit. It's been extended in 2006, 2008, 2015 for solar. The wind ITC is on a different schedule, I think, but in any case, in December, we got another 2-year delay at the ramping down of this. So we've seen 52% annual solar growth since it's been enacted. So still there. If you look all the way to the right, you can see that it looks like right now it's scheduled to go down, but when I move to the next slide, you'll see that maybe it'll go up again. You know, maybe it'll stay there for a little while longer so we can continue to invest and get some tax credit. The other thing that's current federal policy is this DOE loan guarantee program, a really fantastic program for businesses to invest in new technologies. And what it's funny, I've been in this business for quite some years now, and what felt like brand new just 10 years ago is now standard practice. So things are moving at the speed of light, so to speak, and really excited that the DOE continues to have guaranteed loans. You do have to put all kinds of, go through hurdles, et cetera, but that is a possibility out there for organizations. The federal DOE appropriations, recently $1.5 billion in appropriations for the CETO office, Solar Energy Technologies Office. That's the office where our program comes through. So again, we're federally funded to go out and help communities. It's about a total of $300 million a year that goes out toward different technologies that are happening. So again, there are currently federal programs that help deploy this type of technology out there and help communities get ready for it. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So on the next slide, we're talking about what are our plans for solar moving forward at the federal level. If you look at Biden's campaign goals, net zero emissions from the energy industry by 2035, that's a stretch. It's exciting. There are definitely some utility companies that will be able to hit that. I think there will be others that will really struggle. But looking at net zero emissions by 2035, whole economy by 2050. So huge goals that are being set at the federal level. And I think from those goals, you can anticipate then that there will be support to meet those goals available. there has been another goal from Biden has been the historic investment in energy efficiency and in clean energy. So this investment that he's talking about is allocating about $400 billion over the next 10 years. Again, a lot of money being funneled into the public arena to invest in these types of technologies. I think as a community, then making sure that you are ready and available to apply for those funds as they become available and have everything set up, I think is just the smart way to go. Potential actions moving forward, executive orders that have already been signed. We did join the Paris Climate Accord again, which I think is a great signal to the rest of the world, but also, again, a signal for what's coming from the federal government. We anticipate that there's going to be further restrictions on emissions, that those will be set soon. We're also anticipating prioritizing climate impact in any cost benefit analysis. So if you're doing something for the federal government, that you're going to have to include what is going to be the climate impact of this project. And I think that will change how companies do business, which will be a good thing. The infrastructure bills, again, I mentioned some of them on the last slide. Biden also plans 1.7 trillion federal investment for infrastructure. That's going to include things like transmission lines, distribution lines, substations, the types of energy infrastructure that need to be in place in order for clean energy to be rolled out. Again, we expect to see an extension of the ITC, so that investment tax credit for solar, we expect to see it being extended further to help continue the growth of solar. And then a standalone tax credit for energy storage. For those of you who are watching, you know, what the Doug curve looks like and what it means when everybody's got solar going onto the grid at one time. We need storage to hopefully hold on to that power until we're not producing it from the sun. So the standalone tax credit for energy storage, I think, will really change how our grid responds to the solar that we're putting on it. So it's again another way for us to update our infrastructure to be able to work with the technologies we have in place. That was a really brief overview. Again, there's so much happening. I could talk all day to you guys, but I don't want to take away from the SolSmart program because Dave's got lots of good stuff to tell you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Teresa. So yeah, just going to start with SolSmart 101. Let's see. And so I want to first put out this sort of acknowledgement and disclaimer that SolSmart is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. My name is Dave Golembeski, and I'm a program manager at Solar Foundation, and I'm a lead technical assistance provider under the SolSmart program. So I'm work directly with local governments to sort of advance solar. So starting off, what is SolSmart? So I want to say that underlying the idea of SolSmart is that local governments are a critical piece to having a clean energy future. We think that they're very influential on the prospects of solar. And so we created this program, SolSmart, which is a national designation and technical assistance program that helps local governments make it faster, easier, and more affordable to install, or for residents, businesses to go solar. And so, how does SolSmart do this? How does SolSmart make it faster, easier, more affordable for their community to go solar? Well, I liken it to LEED certification for buildings, in that SolSmart has established national benchmarks and criteria to advance solar within their community. And it's sort of like a roadmap or sort of a framework to become solar ready. And so once you've met this criteria, these benchmarks, you can earn a SolSmart designation. And SolSmart designation recognizes communities that have taken action to address local barriers to solar energy and foster the growth of mature local solar markets. And so this demonstrates that a community is open for solar business and that they're making it attractive for solar companies and for other business development. And so throughout this process, we offer no-cost technical assistance to help communities, meet their goals, solar goals, and earn SolSmart designation. So get into program design and sort of execution briefly. So we have sort of two sides to the program. One side is the designation side, and that's led by the International City County Management Association, and they're sort of a third-party evaluator and determine if a local government is solar ready, if they have met the SolSmart criteria and benchmarks. And so they will ultimately do the review and see, okay, has this local government installed solar on their, on City Hall? Do they have regulations on solar within their zoning code? They'll look through that and they will, and if community has met these benchmarks, they will award them this designation. And so on the other side is the technical assistance program, and that's led by my organization, the Solar Foundation. And we're joined by a really great team of organizations with deep expertise in solar energy and expertise at the local level, like the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the National League of Cities, National Association of Counties. So it's just a great team, and we help local governments through the process to help meet these best practices and these actions. And so this is a SolSmart designation map. We've designated nearly 400 local governments across the country. And so we launched in 2016. And so we have 400 thus far, and we're trying to get even more, reach in every place. And so right now we're in 41 states, plus the District of Columbia. We're in, urban, rural, and suburban communities. We're, communities with no solar experience, and up to communities that are on the cutting edge of solar experience that we've worked with. And so no matter where you are sort of on that spectrum, there's value in participating because we tailor the program to the local government's needs, to the community's interests. So if you're a rural community, we worked with, I think Amesville, Ohio is like the smallest community we worked with. I think it's a population of like 100, 150, folks. And that's sort of a rural community. And so we sort of focused, I think, on, large scale solar. And, if we're working with a suburban community, they might be more interested in residential rooftop solar. So we might help, further that, develop some regulations around that. And so if I had to boil down, the results, the goals of participating in SolSmart, I'd say these three things: increasing transparency, increasing understanding, and reducing barriers. And so in the next section of the presentation, how to advance solar locally, you'll see these as, consistent themes. Actions like these, like posting a solar permitting checklist online, developing a solar landing page that has, all the information that maybe a resident would need if they wanted to install solar, or if an installer is coming into your community and has an installation on a house, what submittals do they need, right? So posting that information and having that readily available is really important to advancing solar. And so each of these actions right, listed here are worth a certain amount of points. And so, we have, all in all, we have 75 unique actions, or credits as we call them, across 5 categories. And these promote best practices to help local governments improve their local solar markets. And so these credits range from 5 points to 20 points based on how impactful they are. So we have these 5 categories: permitting, inspection, planning and zoning, government operations, community engagement, and market development. And so we've touched on, this criteria here and what's required to reach designation. But I think one of the most valuable aspects of the program is the technical assistance. And so SolSmart technical assistance providers will work with your elected officials, your local government staff, community members, to help update processes using established solar best practices. And again, this technical assistance is funded by SolSmart, and there's no cost to the community. All that we sort of ask is, participating through the program is, having some staff time committed towards working towards designation, and a commitment to achieving designation. And so, what does what are the mechanics of engaging in technical assistance? Well, I'm a technical assistance provider, so I think what we'll initially do is we'll set up a phone call. We'll sort of discuss the criteria a little bit deeper, and we'll talk about your community's interests in solar goals, community's interest in solar and your community's solar goals, and then we'll establish a baseline. What things have you done on solar thus far? Do you have maybe do you have regulations on solar within your code? Have you installed solar on a municipal building, right? So we know where we stand right now, what points we have now, and then we have a clear case of where we need to go to reach designation and to meet your goals. And so we'll develop a plan, a tailored plan to community's interests. Maybe you're interested in we have 3 levels, which I'll get into in a second, but we have a bronze level, a silver level, and a gold level. And if you're interested in, advancing residential solar, we can tailor our, the TA more towards that. So this is the designation structure. So we have 3 levels: we have bronze, silver, and gold. And for bronze, you need 60 points total. And there's 3 sort of prerequisites, 3 actions that need to be completed sort of at the forefront to earn the designation. And the first one is a solar statement. And that's sort of what I've alluded to earlier, is listing out what your solar goals are and sort of state your commitment to participating in the program. Second is a solar permitting checklist, outlining what goals you have, or outlining what are the required submittals for a rooftop system. And then a third is a zoning review to identify barriers within your zoning code. And so that's done by the technical assistance provider, which I think communities have found a lot of value in, is having a third party going through the code and identifying what might be a barrier, unintentional or intentional. And so, 20 points in permitting inspection, 20 points in planning and zoning, and 20 points across the other 3 categories for bronze. And then for silver, you need 100 points, gold, you need 200 points. And so this is, an overview of sort of the process. You'd first start off, going to the website, requesting a consultation call where you'll have a TA provider discuss, a little bit SolSmart more in depth, discuss your goals, your interests, and then we'll want that sort of commitment letter, and then we'll get started on TA. We'll get started working through the process, and that that engagement can last from, a month, 6 months to a year. It really depends on your community's capacity. Because we're available just to help pick up wherever you leave off. And so once we feel like we've reached designation, we've met the thresholds for bronze, for silver, or gold, we'll submit the application, and we'll hear back in maybe 2 weeks or so, and then we'll publicize that designation. We'll hear back. You'll get awarded the designation, the plaque. And that is going to signal that, your community is open for solar business, that you're solar ready. All right, so that is, now I'll get into how to advance solar locally.
Okay, David, before you get in there, just quick housekeeping. If you have questions as we're going along, please place those into the Q&A box or into the chat. And as we proceed through the presentations, we'll keep track of that and answer your questions in turn. So sorry to interrupt there, David, but I'll let you proceed on your next presentation here.
No, thank you. I needed a drink of water right there. Needed a break for a second. All right. And so to start off, how to advance solar locally, and start off talking about reasons to advance solar. Well, we believe that local governments play a significant role in how, where, and to what extent solar is installed locally. And that goes beyond being just a governing body. And so you'd want to advance solar because, I think there are tremendous benefits to solar within your community. And right now it's just it's an incredible opportunity. You'll see this chart here on the right. Solar is now a cost competitive energy source, and tomorrow it's going to be even cheaper. You'll see that, up here, this yellow line here is, the cost decline. It went from, just under $6 a watt down to, less than $1.50 a watt. And with that, you'll see at the same time, the deployment of solar has just equally gone up. And so now we're at 97 gigawatts of solar in the United States. And so unsubsidized solar is cost competitive with natural gas at the wholesale level and very frequently at the retail rate. And we expect that within just a couple years, solar, will be the cheapest energy source across the country. And so within, I mentioned it took, since the beginning of the solar industry to reach 97 gigawatts. But, most of that growth happened within the past 10 years. But within the next 10 years, that number is going to triple. We're going to add 324 gigawatts of capacity within the next 10 years, which is just incredible. And so with that growth, we're going to see, we see as a credible local economic development tool, because solar resources can be economically developed in every jurisdiction in the country. And as a consequence, you're going to have property owners who will want to develop this valuable economic resource on their property. So even if you're not, particularly interested in promoting solar, we think it's, very wise and apt to prepare for that influx of interest with this tremendous, amount of development. You're going to have, residents calling you up and, saying, what are the processes to install solar? You're going to have developers, calling in. You're going to have installers. So being prepared for that is just something wise to happen in the future. And so with that development, that economic development, jobs, it brings jobs. My organization releases this report called the National Solar Job Census. The most recent one we released found that there were over 250,000 solar workers nationwide. And there were over 7,000 solar workers in Ohio alone, and 213 solar companies in Ohio. And so furthermore, I think, fourth is that solar is a resilient and sustainable energy source. I think last month we heard, a lot of us have heard about the power outages, in Texas, and there were people who did not have power for, a week, many days, and there were people in Texas who did not, or who had a solar plus storage unit, and that unit was able to keep a couple lights on and heat on through that night, through that frigid cold spurt, and so it's just a tremendous deal. And the week following that power outage, a lot of solar businesses saw, 300% increase in website visits from people, in the Texas area. So, and the similar thing happened with the California wildfires. People are starting to understand, the grid is more fragile than we sort of expected. And so having some backup power is just very valuable. And so there's just many tools that local government can use to advance solar locally. And, among all the ways local governments can influence, the prospects is permitting inspection. But since solar is new to many communities, the process can be unfamiliar, the construction process. And so staff to being slower and having a bit more complicated permitting process. And that can significantly increase the costs of a solar energy system. So we recommend simplifying that process, and that encompasses some of these actions here. And this creates sort of a transparent, efficient, and cost-effective, process that saves time and money for, the installer, the building department, and ultimately the resident. And so we start off, streamline the permitting review procedure. So we recommend authorizing one individual or maybe more, a few more, depending on the volume of permits that you're getting, to review the permits, the solar permits, rather than having it reviewed by multiple different departments. When you have multiple different departments, like the permitting department, the fire department, the planning or zoning department review the application, this really lengthens the review time. And so, limiting it to just one or two people who can just process that. And by training your permitting and inspection staff, allows them to process permits more efficiently. And so if they're cross-trained, permitting inspection officials cross-trained, they can be the sole person to review and approve permits. And this allows the staff to focus on other priorities, focus on more complex systems, and handle, increased volume of permits. You could also implement an online permitting process, for approvals and submittals. And so this results in faster turnaround time, less time spent for, installers, developers, traveling to offices for pickup and drop off. And, another thing you can do is post the requirements for a permitting, residential permitting system online. And so they have an example here. This is Franklin County in Ohio. This is their solar permitting checklist. They're a SolSmart bronze designee. And so you'll see that, in a permitting checklist, the idea behind it is that, you want to make sure that the requirements are clear, they're online. This helps with transparency. So everyone knows what to expect. And so you'll see here they have what permit forms are needed, right? Do you need a building permit, a zoning permit, an electrical permit? You say, okay, we need a site plan. You need electrical worksheets, a diagram. You need the spec sheets and the installation manuals for all the parts of the system. So this is just a good example of what can really advance solar, make it much simpler within the permitting and sort of inspection process. Moving on to zoning actions. So local zoning regulations can help facilitate the rapid expansion of solar within a community. And we can do this while simultaneously preserving community character and historic resources. And we really highly recommend addressing solar within your zoning code. Explicitly recognizing and addressing the different forms and uses. We often interact with communities that have their code is silent on solar, right? They don't have any regulations. There are no, definitions on solar, but they'll say, but we do allow solar. And I'd say that we really don't recommend that. That is a barrier to solar. Silence creates uncertainty about the legality of various types of solar development. And it forces local officials to make, kind of ad hoc determinations about what is and isn't allowed. And it can be, kind of tricky. You can get into some, some trouble. We've seen some, when a code is silent, for example, we've seen a community allow a resident to install, and a neighbor, is not happy about it, and they go to the city and they complain, and they eventually, bring, legal action. So it's just it's very tricky, and so we just really recommend being very clear and transparent about it. So when a community, adds definitions and regulations, it improves transparency and can enhance the growth of local solar markets in a really organized and efficient manner. So, create clear regulations, create definitions between rooftop and ground-mounted solar, differentiate between small scale versus large scale solar. And then, look through your code and, try to identify barriers, intentional or unintentional, to solar. Height maximums might be sort of an unintentional barrier. We see oftentimes that, within the zoning district, buildings are constructed up to the maximum allowed height. And so this can limit the ability to install, particularly on flat roofs, because solar systems need to be angled at, to maximize efficiency. And we also recommend, allow accessory use solar by right in, all major zones. And so I have another, example here. This is City of Oberlin, Ohio's. I have a zoning determination letter. And so this is great, option if you, sort of stopgap, if, you can't codify your code, in the short term. This can be sort of a stopgap, clarifying where you stand on solar, for accessory use solar. You see, determination, PV systems are allowed, by right in all these zones. They tell you, how they stand in historic districts. So this is just a great example. Planning. Thoughtful planning is an important step that lays the foundation for taking action. And so incorporating solar in local planning documents sets the vision for the integration of solar energy within other land uses, and it really creates cohesion and buy-in from each department and from community stakeholders. So we recommend within your planning documents, including specific goals, metrics, and strategies. So identify and define solar resources. This can be quantified within a solar mapping tool. And, the COG here, OKI COG, they have their tool available on their website. It's a great tool. And so that can be used, and that data can be put into your local planning documents to identify the resources you have available within your community. Identify opportunities and conflicts within your community. Potential opportunities could be a parking lot, roof, industrial buffer areas. Potential conflicts, it could be, historic resources or urban forests. And third, set targets and goals. And this could be set a target for the number of solar installations across the city, or maybe within municipal buildings. So these are great planning actions. So this is the City of Cleveland's Climate Action Plan, and so you'll see here they have a list of some of their actions that they've achieved thus far. The growth of solar over the years. So yeah, this is something that a good example of what can be done. Okay, community engagement. So local governments are an important and trusted source of information for residents and businesses. And so posting information on the local government website, providing public education, engagement opportunities can help residents and businesses interested in solar make really informed decision. So a solar landing page is a good example of that. And these are, a couple examples here listed: consumer protection resources, list of improved installers, federal and state financing options or incentives, solar training and career opportunities. This is, I think combining these resources into this information clearinghouse can really make it easy for residents, for businesses, for solar developers, to make it easy for them to find information that's most relevant to them. And so this is City of Oberlin's landing page, just as another example. They have their link to solar consumer resource portal, link to their climate action plan. They have their solar permitting checklist. Okay, government operations and market development actions. So the influence and impact of local governments reaches beyond the role of serving as a governing body. Local governments are also employers. They're landlords, they're consumers, which means they're in a unique position to lead by example. And so they can lead by installing solar on public facilities and land, particularly high traffic central locations like libraries, like parking garages and civic centers. They can engage with their local utility to discuss goals for solar, net metering, interconnection, community solar. And this is something that the city of Cincinnati did a few years ago. This is a picture of that right here on the right. And for market development, so local governments can, collaborate with partners and partner with organizations to promote solar within their jurisdiction. They can offer incentives, both financial and non-financial, to encourage the private sector and residents to integrate solar. They can support a community solar program, can support a Solarize or solar co-op campaign. They can offer non-financial incentives like bonus density or reduced parking minimums for buildings that have integrated with PV. So these actions are high impact, and they're typically worse. They can lead to the most megawatts on the grid. And so I have another good example here, Cuyahoga County in Ohio. They supported a solar cooperative. And so just some background on a cooperative. That is like having 100 residents come together and say, okay, we want to install solar on our roofs. And they go to the installer and they say, we have 100 people. how big of a discount can you give us because we have this group, right? And so because of that, the economies of scale, the resident gets a much cheaper system to be installed on their roof. And so a local government helping to support that by raising awareness of that is just a win-win for really for everybody. And so, you know, in conclusion, solar is a huge opportunity right now. There's so much that a local government can do to advance solar. You know, it provides just a ton of benefits, as I mentioned earlier. And, you know, we think that solar should be, you know, a growing piece in your local energy priorities. And Andy will touch on that going forward, this next section.
Yeah, thanks, David. If you unshare your screen and then I can, okay, get my screen back up. There we go. Okay, we don't have any questions to deal with at present. But again, I'm Andy Meyer, the senior planner at OKI, and my role at OKI is in general to help provide best practices and tools to local governments in comprehensive planning and the areas of land use planning. And what I'm going to do in my presentation here is draw connections between the aspects of solar that David talked about and some of your priorities at the local government level. And you might wonder what makes me qualified to speak to your community's priorities. And that's obviously a great question, because sometimes I feel at a loss for words when it comes to my own thoughts and priorities. But in this case, I feel particularly adept at talking to this because last year I wrapped up a project that provides particular insight into local government energy priorities in the region. So there we go. And that is through the local energy planning project. Last year we wrapped up that project. It was a 2.5-year long project utilizing a grant. And through that project, we produced a local energy plan for 8 different communities in the OKI region. And the main purpose of that was to generate a set of model plans that communities can look to in their own, in how to deal with energy in their own planning process, either through a comprehensive planning process or maybe as a standalone planning exercise. And as we're looking to develop the set of 8 model energy plans, we look to choose communities for their variety. We look to cover all the bases of urban communities, rural communities, suburban communities, large cities, small villages, townships of various size. And we succeeded in that. The 8 communities that we chose really covered all the bases. And we have a group of plans that any community in the OKI region can look to and see a similar community to their own situation, to model their own thinking and planning towards. So the project work is located at the website energy.oki.org. I encourage you to check it out. See what we came up with and what the specific communities came up with in their energy plans. But for here, the reason touching on this, is through generating these plans, the process facilitated a deep discussion with community leaders and the public about their energy priorities. And that's why I feel that I can speak to how solar and the different steps that Theresa and David were talking about really connect with what you may be thinking along the lines of your local priorities. So what those priorities are, obviously the first one and universally held by all the communities that we worked with is they're looking to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, and energy efficiency, and to an extent solar energy, can be key to that, lowering of energy costs and utility costs, and saving taxpayer money, making the best use of taxpayer money. Also, local governments that we worked with were very interested in being a conduit for programs and information for the residents and businesses. This is one that surprised me a little bit, at least to the extent that local governments were willing to perform this function, especially in the energy sphere. Sometimes the energy landscape, energy efficiency has kind of held a reputation of being a forum for some disingenuous actors or businesses who are trying to take advantage of tax incentives or other things like that. And for that reason, I felt that local governments would want to shy away from getting in the middle and being that conduit for companies. But we found quite the opposite. Local governments really felt it was their mission, if there was something good out there that could benefit their residents or businesses, that it was central to their mission to bring that in and be a conduit for those programs. We talked about addressing the needs of the underserved. Theresa mentioned the solar tax credits and the energy efficiency tax credits at the beginning of the presentation. And that's by and large how a lot of the funding for solar energy incentives and energy efficiency incentives have been carried out, and for good reason. It's you get your best bang for the buck that way. However, that process of offering a rebate or a tax credit is only something that that only a certain people and situations can handle or can take advantage of. You have to be a homeowner. You have to have the ability to pay for the improvement up front and then wait on the back end to get the incentive rebate or tax credit. This leaves out folks who don't own their home, that are renters, and really misses out on providing improvement to the housing stock in a community that really needs it. Housing that's older, that is less energy efficient, usually aren't gathered up by these types of incentives. So we engaged the communities in that conversation. Unfortunately, there's no real silver bullets, but provided some resources and programs out there to help elderly residents and lower income residents get some energy efficiency improvement in their homes. We talked about the ability to improve the delivery of services. So where David was talking about zoning codes and building inspections and checklists, these are methods that local governments can use to really improve the way they serve the residences, their businesses. Promoting economic investment was a big priority. That obviously every community wants to promote economic investment in their jurisdiction. And then we talked about demonstrating leadership. Several communities saw that energy efficiency and clean energy is a way to demonstrate leadership, and for local governments to be on the leading edge of promoting clean energy and energy efficiency. So real quick, I want to talk or just show how solar energy is being carried out in the community. You see in the lower left is the Cincinnati Zoo, their solar installation. This in the middle, Turkey Foot Middle School in Northern Kentucky installed solar panels on their roof. A house in the lower right-hand corner, I believe is in Clifton, but rooftop solar is becoming a popular addition for homeowners to install now that the price of solar panels has come down. And in the upper right is a ground-mounted solar installation in Eden Park near Gilbert Avenue. So how do these local priorities fit into the local energy puzzle? And there's four main ways that I've identified, and I will discuss in detail. So first is solar energy can help you control your municipal energy costs. When you purchase solar energy, you're purchasing the power that those solar panels produce at a known long-term fixed rate. So the solar panels cost X amount, and whether you pay that cost up front or you finance it over a certain period, you know what that cost is. As well as the solar providers can tell you pretty accurately on average how much energy those solar panels are going to produce every year. And those panels will produce that amount of energy year in, year out for 25 plus years. So what you're doing is purchasing that power for the next 25 years at a known fixed rate. And what that does is that allows you to hedge against a future rise in energy costs. So you can say, I can purchase solar energy at 6 cents a kilowatt hour or whatever the going rate is. And that might be on par with what you're getting from your local utility. But from your local utility, are you able to predict what that rate is going to be next year or 5 years from now or 10 years from now? With solar, you know that cost of 6 cents a kilowatt hour is what you're going to effectively be paying for the life of those solar panels. Also, a solar installation is an essential piece of a net zero energy cost building. So the picture there on the right is Silverton's town hall. They purchased that building 3 or 4 years ago, did extensive renovations inside to make it energy efficient. The heating and air conditioning is done through a geothermal system on site. But a little more than a year ago, they took the final step of installing solar panels on the roof. And they don't have the panels in this picture, but you can kind of see the racking on the roof there. And and with the installation of those solar panels, the building becomes a net zero energy cost building. So Silverton no longer pays a utility bill for their town hall. So that's a way that they've gone about over the long term controlling their municipal energy costs. We talked about improving service to the community. David talked at length about how permitting can be a hurdle, and having clear codes that allow most installations by right it is a help by cutting that red tape, allowing installers to work quicker and more efficiently and provide lower costs to their customers. Having checklists to guide homeowners and installers really helps speed up that process, make the process more clear, and what the regulations are. And the last part I want to touch on is it also allows you to be an advocate for your community. So what hasn't been talked about is utility scale installations. Theresa mentioned at the beginning, one of the Biden administration's priorities is for utilities to be carbon neutral or zero emission by 2035. And clean sources of energy like wind power and solar power are going to be key to achieving that goal. And consequently, there will be more utility scale solar installations going in, even in Ohio. And we haven't seen a lot of that locally within the OKI region, but there has been a lot of activity just outside the OKI region on utility scale solar installations in Preble County and Brown County in particular. And utility scale solar installations, they're not subject to local zoning rules, and that it's subject to a review by the State Power Siting Board. But even within that process, there is a mechanism for local input. But it's key that local communities understand that process and understand how to participate in that process so that they can advocate for the best interests of their community when a company wants to locate a utility scale solar installation within your community. So just being up to speed on that is a way that you can serve your community by being an advocate. We're going to talk about economic development. So for the same, some of the same reasons of locking in predictable and low energy costs through solar that local governments might be interested in, your companies that are in your community might also be looking to secure predictable energy costs. Also, solar could have a particular congruence with company identity, that the company wants to be seen as green, and installing solar is a way to project that company identity. But what is really important is that solar installations represents a investment in the community. And that's what local governments should be interested in, and why you should be interested in promoting private sector solar installations. That if a company is investing the dollars to put solar panels on the roof, that represents them saying, I'm investing in this building, I want to be here in your community for a reasonably long amount of time, and that represents a win for the community. And a way that you can make this type of solar installation easier is by enacting PACE financing. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, and it's a financing mechanism that that companies can use, companies and commercial building owners can use to finance energy efficient improvements as well as solar and wind installations. The mechanism is where a bank underwrites the loan, but the loan, instead of being paid back normally, the loan is paid back through a special assessment that appears on the property tax bill. And because it's assessed on the property tax bill, it has to be approved via a mechanism through the local government. So if you haven't enacted a PACE district in your community, I encourage you to look into that. That's an important financing mechanism for promoting solar through businesses and commercial installations. And lastly, solar is a way for local governments to demonstrate leadership. Local governments have a key role in addressing the migration to clean sources of energy. One of the strongest tools is that you hold is the energy aggregation process. So by allowing or picking a clean source of energy through that process, you can boost your community's interest and investment into clean energy. And furthermore, municipal solar installation, in addition to the cost advantages that I talked about earlier, can be a physical demonstration of the community's commitment to clean energy. It shows that that community is walking the walk. So many communities we worked with saw the primary function of the local government as being a conduit of information, and a solarized campaign. They're a key way for local governments to bring cost-saving opportunity for residents to buy into solar at a discount. The solar co-op situation that David talked about earlier. It's the local government is key to matching the residents up with a solarized provider and solar installers. So at this point, I want to toss it back to David. And if you've taken several of these steps already, or if you're just at the beginning, he'll close out by sharing with us how SolSmart and the Solar Foundation is set up and able to help your community.
Yep. All right. So I'm gonna bring it home here. Sort of wrap things up in a bow here. Case for participation in SolSmart. So how SolSmart technical assistance helps. So I have this on this bottom here. This is from an ICMA 2019 Energy Transition Survey. And it asked the question of a couple hundred local government officials. I think there was over 400 that answered this question. How significant are the following factors in inhibiting efforts by your local government to address issues related to the energy transition? And these are the top three answers here. Lack of funding. That was 85% said it was significant in some way. Over 70% said lack of staff capacity. And, over, 60% said lack of information on how to proceed. Local government helps, addresses those issues. SolSmart is no cost to the community. It's all, funded by, SolSmart, by, the Department of Energy. And so we help to really address, the gap of limited staff capacity. I'll be working with your, I'd be working with your local government, and that, takes away time that, you might need if you're, trying to advance solar on your own. But also, as you go through the process, like with permitting, you can sort of reduce your overall staff needs by being more efficient with your staff time. Another point is really strengthens, your community resources. You become trained on solar. You just become not much more knowledgeable. And lastly, this technical assistance supports, the community in becoming more competitive and really opens the doors to, business growth. And so we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have a great technical assistance team. These are all the folks on the team, all the different organizations, and we can help throughout the process. And would also mention that we have a ton of resources that are available online. Guides, templates, and resources. A program guide that walks you through the SolSmart designation criteria. We have trainings and webinars recorded that are available online, and we also have templates. So we have like a permitting checklist template. So all you'd have to do, is essentially drag and drop your name, your community name, fill in some, maybe if you have certain local requirements into this document, and post this online, and it's there. And so it really simplifies the process of advancing solar, participating in SolSmart. Now, sort of how SolSmart designation helps. Well, we're a sort of a third-party validator of your local solar processes. We have the ICMA, International City County Management, who does sort of the review, and will determine if you're, you can earn SolSmart designation. And what I'd say sort of there is we're not tied to any sort of specific solar companies. We don't really have a bias in that respect. We're, Solar Foundation is a nonprofit. We're funded by the, Department of Energy. And so we believe in the solar future, and, it's going to be bright. And so we want to empower the local government to use, the resources that they have to make it easier to install solar. And so that's what our goal is. And by getting a designation, this raises awareness to your community. As I've mentioned, harkened on this a couple times, is that, SolSmart is all about transparency, about clarity, about understanding. And so the designation is such a critical piece to those three things, because you could advance solar, but that could go under the radar. People might not know about it. And so a designation raises awareness of all this amazing work that you've done. And it's a nice pat on the back for your staff and for, your local government for everything, the work that you've done. And see, you're able to distinguish from your peers, local governments within your region. You're able to earn, national recognition, local press. You're able to become a leader that, local governments will look to. We often see, local governments will look to their neighbors if, if their neighbor has solar, policies or processes, they will look to that local government for guidance. They will call up that person, their, colleague in the building department or their colleague in the zoning department, and they will essentially follow that local government, in what they've done. And so by going through the program, by earning designation, you become that leader, and you become that person that your peers are going to come to for advice. And lastly, it's a signal to solar companies that you're open to solar business. It says, hey, we're solar ready. We're conducive to economic development. We're conducive to solar development. And so those are the reasons. And just want to put up, our contact information, my email here, Teresa's email. If you're interested in participating in SolSmart, reach out to me directly. Visit our website, and you can also, sort of request a consultation through our website at this link below. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for, having me here and, being able to chat with everybody.
Great, thanks, David. We do have one question, and it is a tricky question. So I'll read it, and then I'll give my take, and David, you can fill in your experience in this. So the question is, I'm the planning and zoning administrator for a small Kentucky community, and utility scale interest in our community has exploded within the last 1.5 years, with 4 to 5 developers looking to develop here. The Planning Commission and I are in the process of drafting solar energy systems regulations, and they're working in the face of a rural community that's impassioned and divided on the issue. Do you have any advice on consensus building on solar development, in this being more targeted to utility scale solar development? Lots of people are worried about their property values and view shed, but local farmers want solar to be able to stabilize their income. So my thoughts on that, it is a tricky situation, and working with utility scale solar, the process, at least the process that I'm familiar with in Ohio, there's not a very large window for local communities to have their voices heard with the state power siting board. With that, it is, I think that the exercise that they're going through is valuable, to have that discussion and come to an agreement as a community on what's necessary to protect and what are the opportunities there to allow solar installations, and under what conditions, what are the guardrails, so to speak, that the community wants to establish or put in place there. And advice on consensus building, it really is a kind of gathering the community together through a public input process. And rather than talking directly about the solar panels or the solar installation, at least at first, I think it's important to come to a consensus about what are the priorities, what does the community need to protect in that situation. You know, what are the necessary elements of the community character that are at play? Because as the person posing the question talked about, you know, farmers are looking at this solar to be able to stabilize their income and prolong the viability of their farming activity. And if that farming activity is kind of key to the character of that community, you know, maybe looking at solar in that light, you know, provides a different perspective to those residents whose initial reaction is a negative one, because it might be, you know, some solar panels might be keeping that farm from turning into you know, an industrial site or a residential subdivision, which they also might not necessarily find favorable to their community character.
Yeah, I think those are some great points, Andy. Yeah, and I think this is a complex, you know, sort of a question, and so I can follow up with some resources to George, who asked the question. But yeah, I think, yeah, just being, you know, trying to convene the public, bringing the community into the fold, into, you know, as you're developing, you know, I guess the new regulations on solar, making sure that they're aware of what you're looking for and what, you know, what that would look like, what these regulations would look like to them. And I think, you know, you can, you know, figure out a way to allow, you know, these systems, while also sort of meeting sort of, you know, the desires of some of these folks. You know, there's, you know, certain, you know, setback requirements that you can set, a certain distance. You can confine them, the solar, to certain districts, you know, zoning districts. So there are ways, you know, there's some like screening. So there are some ways that you can sort of meet both at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I can follow up with some more information on that.
Great. We don't have any other questions. So at this point, I want to thank everyone for attending. Thank you, David and Teresa, for providing all this great information for us this morning. And everyone enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you, Andy.
Bye.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Theresa.